Okay, I just heard another sound.
Maria, we're not picking up anything via the seismic sensors, either.
Something's moving here.
Yeah, something moving across the screen right here.
It was March 11, 2024, deep in the wet silence of Washington's Olympic National Forest, where fog settles low and radio signals vanish within minutes of the road. That morning, a motion sensor blinked to life. Hours later, a new video appeared online. What it showed would soon divide everyone who watched it. The clip lasted 18 seconds. At first, it showed only static night vision grain, the faint hiss of wind, and a campfire's reflected glow across a plastic tarp. Then, from beyond the creek, a broad, upright shape crossed the frame. Its movements were slow and deliberate, partially obscured by drifting fog, before it turned and disappeared behind a ridge. A heartbeat later, the recording cut to black. Initial reactions were muted, but re-uploads began spreading across Reddit and YouTube within hours. A pattern soon formed in how people labeled the reposts, each one hinting at survival and encounter, rather than simple observation. By the next evening, thousands had watched the clip, yet Ellison himself could not be reached. The silence where his voice should have been grew louder with each unanswered call. Mark Ellison, 50, was a former fire tower ranger who spent 2 decades across the Olympic Peninsula. Known for his precision, he logged every route and weather shift, except, perhaps, the one that mattered most. He lived alone near Forks, where the forest pressed close to his property. After leaving his post, he ran a small channel focused on camping safety and wildlife behavior, field notes more than entertainment. He ignored the folklore around him, documenting only what could be measured. The device he used on his final trip was a compact infrared trail camera that automatically sent every recording to offsite storage. Early March 2024 brought steady rain to the upper Sol Duc drainage. Rain carried the smell of iron from wet bark. Mark Ellison had planned a 3-day trip to test a hybrid solar battery trail camera under dense canopy. He drove from his home in Forks and parked off Highway 101 near Fairholme before hiking in on foot. His plan was simple: set 2 cameras at separate clearings, then return once the data uploaded. Each note he recorded felt routine, until it didn't. GPS tracker and voice recordings showed a routine trip. He checked in at precise intervals, 3:12 p.m., noting barometric pressure, 5:40 p.m., mentioning drizzle. He reached camp before sunset, near a tributary of the Sol Duc River. On day 2, he moved between camera sites, covering nearly 5 miles before returning to camp by late afternoon. His last coordinates placed him a quarter mile from his tent. At 7:52 that evening, Ellison sent a voice note about rising wind and plans to leave early. The message uploaded, then the connection dropped. No further transmissions came after 8 p.m. At 8:41 p.m., his trail camera detected motion. It recorded 18 seconds of night vision footage before uploading to the cloud, the same clip showing a tall shape near the riverbank. Despite the valley's notoriously weak service, short bursts of connection often occurred along ridgelines, which could explain how the file transmitted successfully. Yet the file was perfect, too perfect. The successful upload confirmed equipment was functioning, yet nothing followed. The cameras stayed silent through the night. If the camera was alive, something else in the valley was too. When Ellison failed to return, his sister reported him overdue on March 14th. She had assumed he'd extended the trip because of persistent rain and poor road conditions, but after several unanswered messages, she contacted authorities. Search teams later found his vehicle locked at the trailhead. Teams advanced along the drainage using standard search grids. Near his camp, they found the tent intact, sleeping bag rolled, and cooking gear neatly stacked. His backpack rested under the tarp with 1 day's rations left. The radio was powered off, its batteries removed. Only his phone was missing. The charger remained coiled beside a full battery pack, suggesting he'd taken it with him before vanishing into the forest. A recovered set of boot impressions led away from camp for roughly 40 yards before blending into a patch of wet moss where tracking became unreliable. The path ran parallel to the stream in the same direction as the camera's recorded footage. Was he following something or being led? Searchers found no signs of struggle, no animal traces, and no evidence of sudden runoff or slope collapse. Technicians found Ellison's GPS trail ended abruptly at 8:02 p.m., less than 40 minutes before his camera recorded motion. Investigators blamed either drained batteries or a signal drop in rough terrain. His smartwatch kept transmitting 40 minutes longer, logging movement after the tracker went dark. 2 devices, 2 endpoints, no clear link. The footage drew attention only after his family shared his details online, connecting his name to the viral clip. Search teams expanded their radius but found nothing new. Rain erased traces. Only his gear and a field notebook remained. The last entry dated March 3rd, stopping mid-sentence, pen lifted mid-stroke. Frame-by-frame playback revealed more detail. The object's outline extended nearly 7 feet above ground level when scaled against visible branches. The infrared exposure, usually harsh on warm objects, registered the figure several degrees cooler than its surroundings. That single anomaly became the focus of countless breakdowns. Under normal conditions, a living subject moving through cold air would appear warmer on infrared. The inverse pattern suggested heavy insulation, either natural or layered, capable of masking body heat. But what kind of insulation makes something colder than the forest itself? Colorized conversions circulated across multiple forums, each exaggerating contrast in different ways. One enhanced frame showed a faint reflection on the lower left, 2 consecutive frames in which a smaller irregular shape appeared. Some called it a sensor echo or a lens reflection from fog droplets, while others saw the hint of another crouched figure. No one could agree on the scale, and no one could explain why it moved when nothing else did. Professionals with backgrounds in drone and wildlife imaging weighed in. A group of remote sensing students from Oregon State University attempted to reconstruct the camera's parameters based on the embedded EXIF metadata. Coordinates placed the scene on the south side of the Salt Duke River, roughly 2 miles from the nearest service road. Temperature metadata suggested ambient conditions near 43 degrees Fahrenheit, consistent with Ellison's earlier logs. The camera angle matched one of the test positions Ellison had described to fellow hobbyists weeks earlier. In a comment preserved through cached archives, he mentioned a spot overlooking a narrow stream bend with enough open ground to track deer movement. That detail aligned with the topography visible in the clip, a sloping bank descending into a shallow channel bordered by alder and cedar. He'd mapped it himself. He'd walked that ground before. So why did it look different through the lens? What puzzled analysts was the clean upload timestamp. The file's creation and transfer times showed no signs of delay or corruption. If the device had malfunctioned or been damaged, the upload would have stalled or produced a partial file. Instead, the connection remained steady for the full duration, meaning the camera completed its data queue without interruption. Perfect transmission from a valley known for dead zones. Technicians studying the pixel patterns noticed a faint flicker in the upper right quadrant between frames 241 and 245, less than a quarter of a second in real time. When brightness levels were equalized, a diffused light signature appeared, consistent with a brief reflection from a wet surface or metallic object. It moved counter to the camera's natural light gradient, suggesting an independent source of reflection rather than random interference. Something had caught light where no light should have been. Theories diverged. One camp claimed it was a visual echo from the moving figure. Another insisted it was the partial outline of a second body entering the periphery. A third argued for atmospheric distortion common in humid forest air when illuminated by infrared. No theory could fully explain why the reflected area appeared cooler than both background and subject, reversing expected thermal hierarchy. Independent field photographers recreated similar setups using identical hardware. Most achieved plausible silhouettes using heavy clothing or insulated suits, yet none could replicate the precise temperature inversion shown in the file. The simulated subjects always registered warmer than the forest floor, even when soaked or coated with mud. To match the readings, an object would need either a heat-reflective surface or extremely low core temperature inconsistent with a living human, or it would need to have been there so long it had become part of the cold itself. Satellite imagery confirmed that the area around the recorded coordinates contained deep canopy and water channels known for producing cold air pockets. In such zones, temperature gradients could shift abruptly over short distances. Analysts tried mapping air density changes to explain the flickering outlines, yet the footage's stability argued against wind interference. Every tree in the frame held still. Only the moving figure showed motion distortion, as if everything else knew to stay frozen. As online interest grew, various users claimed to possess clearer copies. Most were filtered versions of the same source, compressed and re-uploaded under misleading titles. The original remained on a cloud server associated with Ellison's account until it was mirrored by multiple websites. A retired wildlife biologist from the Pacific Northwest Research Station reviewed the clip at normal speed and noted proportion ratios unusual for any known animal. The limb length appeared human, but the forward pitch of the torso and restricted arm swing suggested limited shoulder rotation, a trait found in large quadrupeds when forced upright. Combined with the even pacing and apparent mass, the profile did not match typical human gait. It walked like something learning how. Forums filled with motion tracking overlays. Volunteers marked joint points and stride intervals. The results varied, but shared one oddity. The stride distance measured consistently longer than that of an average adult male. The figure's head never turned toward the camera, despite the obvious illumination shift when it crossed the clearing. It moved as if aware of the light source, but indifferent to it, or as if it had done this before. A few users highlighted the final 3 frames where the shape began to descend behind a slope. The camera registered a brief drop in ambient contrast, followed by a pulse of interference resembling static. Some mistook it for a system error, but file diagnostics confirmed intentional cutoff. The device terminated recording precisely at the standard 18-second mark, meaning the motion trigger had completed its cycle rather than failed. It ended exactly when it was supposed to. Nothing malfunctioned, nothing broke. It simply stopped watching. When investigators later cross-checked the metadata with official survey maps, the coordinates aligned with a ridge overlooking a narrow tributary of the Sol Duc River. The distance to the nearest access point measured just over 2 miles, accessible only by foot and far from campsites. Despite meticulous analysis, no consensus emerged. To some, the video showed a hoax performed with precision equipment. To others, it was a rare example of an unknown presence moving through one of the most isolated valleys in the region. The only certainty came from the data itself. The camera functioned exactly as designed, recorded at stable temperature and time, and transmitted the file without error. But certainty isn't the same as truth. By the second week after the leak, breakdown threads dominated discussion boards. Digital forensics groups produced papers describing possible causes, ranging from double exposure to sensor misread. Yet each hypothesis left one constant unexplained: the secondary reflection that appeared in those 2 brief frames. It was there, unmistakable, yet no one could say what it was or why it moved opposite the main subject. Some things defy focus no matter how many times you replay them. When search teams reached the coordinates tied to the footage, the clearing matched every contour visible in the clip: the slope, the stream bend, even the distinctive split trunk on the left side of the frame, all present. But the primary trail camera that had recorded the event was gone. Only its nylon mounting strap and a length of solar wire remained, both ends frayed but not cut. The ground beneath the tree showed no signs of struggle, only a compressed patch of soil where the camera housing should have rested. Something had taken it gently. 200 yards from the site, Ellison's backup camera remained active. It captured no visuals, only 8 seconds of heavy impacts, a low hum, then static at 8:42 p.m., 1 minute after the main clip. Analysts noted an electromagnetic-type spike, as if something nearby generated interference. His vehicle sat untouched at the Fairholme trailhead, keys gone, but supplies intact. Hours after the footage spread, forensic users discovered a second save at 9:03 p.m., over 20 minutes after all devices went dark. Service in the valley was poor, yet deliberate access was clear. The file had been reopened. The question was, by whom? This discrepancy became the first tangible contradiction in the case. If Ellison had left camp before 8 p.m. and the footage auto-uploaded at 8:41, who interacted with the file at 9:03? Investigators tested the hypothesis of an automated server sync, but logs from the manufacturer's database showed no queued retries or firmware updates at that time. Whatever process modified the file had occurred locally, not through routine background operations. Further inspection revealed that the 9:03 record shared the same checksum as the original, ruling out content alteration. The change involved metadata only, consistent with a resave command triggered when a user previews or reopens the file, as if someone had been reviewing what they just recorded. That small gap, 22 minutes between upload and modification, became the focal point for both official investigators and online sleuths. Some analysts noted that minor server clock drift or timestamp desynchronization could technically account for the discrepancy, though the lack of corresponding network activity kept the anomaly under scrutiny. Searchers on the ground had found no footprints beyond the creek, no equipment suggesting Ellison retrieved the camera himself, and no evidence of wildlife interference capable of pressing buttons or powering devices. Yet the file's behavior implied human interaction, or something that understood how humans interact. Forums began speculating that someone else had been in the area, possibly another hiker or a passerby who found the camera and triggered a manual upload while checking its contents. But weather records showed heavy rain moving through the region that night, reducing visibility and making travel off established routes unlikely. Rangers also confirmed no other camping permits had been issued within a 5-mile radius during that period. No one else should have been there. So who touched the camera at 9:03? 3 nights after the original clip spread, a second version surfaced on a small video mirror under an unverified account. The username matched none of Ellison's, yet the description claimed it was a restored copy from the trail camera's SD card. Uploaded just after midnight on March 14th, between official searches and the final volunteer sweep, it seemed deliberately timed. The checksum differed slightly, indicating a new encode. This version ran 5 seconds longer. Amid static and interference, a faint shape appeared, elongated, bent, dragging something downslope. The feed ended in a smear of noise and blackout. 5 seconds that changed everything. Video forensic groups analyzed the new clip and found no edits. Only breaks typical of an interrupted upload resumed under weak signal. The file acted as if a frozen transfer had later continued from cached data, suggesting the added segment always existed but failed to send the first time. The camera had seen more than anyone realized. Its block-based system could store incomplete frames for later upload, yet no one could explain how those missing packets resurfaced 3 days later, or who held the physical card needed to retrieve them. By then, search teams had confirmed one fact: the primary camera was gone. Compression analysis deepened the puzzle. The static at the start of the added sequence displayed a symmetrical frequency band, evidence of re-encoding, not external noise. Experts described it as a signature left when damaged frames are rebuilt by automated correction software. The recovered images were cleaner than they should have been, almost too intact for a device that had supposedly gone offline. Someone had worked to restore them. But why? Viewers who enhanced the footage noticed a series of faint flickers along the right edge, forming a repeating pattern consistent with a swinging light source. When motion tracked, the rhythm aligned closely with a bipedal gait, alternating at just under 2 strides per second. The dragging form appeared attached or pulled, its heat signature fading unevenly as the larger shape moved downslope. Something was being carried or taken. Timing comparisons soon connected the recovered segment to another dataset, Ellison's smartwatch telemetry extracted from cloud backup. His device had been configured to sync periodically through a low-bandwidth satellite relay, preserving minute-level heart rate logs even after local signal loss. The data showed a sudden elevation at 8:44 p.m., climbing rapidly for less than 2 minutes before flatlining at 8:46. The moment of peak signal loss overlapped exactly with the extended portion of the new video. His heart had stopped at the exact moment the extra footage ended. To investigators, the correlation was circumstantial, but for online researchers, it became a turning point. The idea that the extra footage aligned with Ellison's last recorded heartbeat implied both events were captured within the same minute. The footage didn't just show what happened, it showed when he stopped running. Within 24 hours of its posting, the second file was removed from the original site for privacy concerns, but duplicates spread immediately across mirror channels. Each re-upload introduced new compression errors, yet the defining sequence, the faint figure dragging weight behind the ridge, remained visible enough to sustain argument. Whether it depicted corrupted pixels or something tangible, its timing and method of appearance transformed the case from an isolated disappearance into a digital mystery. The recovery team moved through the Sol Duke drainage with handheld thermal scanners mapping every contour of the floodplain. On the 6th day, near a narrowing of the creek, they found an object half buried in mud beneath a fallen branch. It was Ellison's smartwatch, screen cracked, band torn, but GPS module intact. Data extracted from the watch showed a sudden burst of motion beginning at 8:43 p.m., with his heart rate spiking at 8:44 as he covered roughly 200 feet in under a minute before signals stopped. The elevation graph indicated a brief incline, then descent toward the water. Analysts estimated that he had covered the distance in less than 40 seconds before the signal flatlined. 40 seconds of speed, then nothing. Around the same area, investigators documented 2 sets of impressions in the soft soil. One matched standard hiking boots consistent with Ellison's model, size 11. The other appeared parallel, larger, broader, and bare. The second track measured nearly 14 inches from heel to toe, but the shape was uneven, with pressure points unlike a human arch. The prints extended for 3 paces before fading where the mud thinned near gravel. Wildlife biologists from the Department of Fish and Wildlife later examined plaster casts and noted that a bear could produce similar depth under rearing posture. But the stride length, over 5 feet, did not match known locomotion patterns. Biologists noted that while bears can rear briefly, sustained pacing at that stride length was improbable. The impressions showed neither a full quadrupedal gait nor a consistent upright stance, but something intermediate, something that walked beside him, matching him step for step. Despite growing speculation, law enforcement issued no public statements. Search logs made no mention of recovering the missing SD card. Officially, the investigation categorized all unrecovered equipment as having undetermined disposition. By mid-March, the internet divided into factions. One group advanced what they called the human theory, the belief that Ellison's disappearance resulted from a staged scare gone wrong. They argued that another camper or filmmaker had planned a viral prank, misjudged conditions, and triggered a real emergency. But if it was staged, why did the footprints continue past the frame? Opposing them were proponents of the biological theory who treated the event as an authentic encounter with an unidentified species. They cited the temperature inversions in the original file and the stride spacing at the creek as evidence of a large biped adapted for stealth in cold environments. And no one could say who moved the file at 9:03. A third camp, labeled by moderators as the staged upload theory, took a different approach. They suggested that Ellison himself had captured legitimate wildlife footage, but someone else later manipulated or recontextualized it. The 9:03 p.m. modification, they claimed, marked an external actor accessing his account after the fact. These competing narratives generated a wave of open-source data projects. One group of independent analysts pulled IP logs from Mirror archives and discovered an address embedded in the header of the second upload. The IP traced not to Washington, but to a satellite modem registered in Idaho. When cross-referenced with commercial leasing databases, the modem's serial number appeared in a rental invoice issued to a forestry contractor operating in Olympic National Forest earlier that year. The company had returned the unit in January, weeks before Ellison's trip, a recycled connection from equipment that shouldn't have been active. But it was. That discovery reignited claims that someone with professional field access had handled the footage after his disappearance. Digital forensics experts reviewing the trail camera's communication protocol agreed that a remote connection could have initiated upload from any device paired to its cloud credentials. It was plausible, though improbable, that a technician testing residual logins from a recycled modem could have triggered a resync without knowing its content. Or someone knew exactly what they were looking for. While online debates deepened, a new development surfaced in late March. A regional newspaper received an anonymous message from someone claiming to possess unlisted footage from the same night. The sender described being a drone hobbyist testing night sensors several miles south of the Sol Duke drainage. Attached metadata placed the flight path within overlapping airspace at 8:44 p.m., 2 minutes before Ellison's smartwatch signal ended. When the outlet viewed the clip, it showed a faint thermal flare above the canopy, followed by a sudden cold patch moving diagonally through the frame. At 8:44, a new light cut across the canopy. Not bright, cold. There were no visible lights or reflective markers, no indication of human presence. Analysts who later examined screenshots described the object as elongated and vertical, emitting less heat than its surroundings, as if covered in moisture or dense material. A shape moved against the gradient, vertical, silent. The drone's coordinates intersected within roughly 150 feet of Ellison's final smartwatch GPS ping, accounting for expected GPS drift under dense canopy. Within a day of publication, the file vanished. The hosting site replaced the link with a message stating it had been removed for privacy violation. Attempts to verify ownership failed. The account used to upload the footage was deleted, and the original drone operator never came forward. The newspaper printed a brief correction stating that they could not confirm the clip's authenticity. Still, enough viewers had archived it to maintain discussion. The alignment of timestamps, trail camera at 8:41, drone at 8:44, smartwatch at 8:46, formed a triangular chronology that no one could dismiss. 3 devices, 3 timestamps, and nothing after. By early April, official search efforts concluded. Reports described weather degradation, reduced visibility, and low likelihood of recovery. Official reports later summarized 3 confirmed data points, each drawn from separate devices. The trail camera upload at 8:41 p.m., the smartwatch cessation at 8:46 p.m., and the drone telemetry anomaly logged at 8:44 p.m. Beyond those times, every trace ended. There were no confirmed sightings, no physical remains, and no identified suspects. Just silence where a man used to be. When spring arrived, the online focus shifted from search coordination to retrospective analysis. A few persistent archivists built composite maps linking every timestamp and coordinate into an interactive model. The overlap revealed a convergence zone less than 2 acres wide, dense forest floor bordered by drainage slopes, where line of sight dropped abruptly. It was the same valley Ellison had documented years earlier while mapping fire breaks. He'd walked that ground 100 times. But had something else been walking it longer? In June, another anomaly drew attention. Users tracking residual logins to Ellison's accounts noted new activity. Someone had accessed his long-abandoned video page from a masked IP routed through Oregon. The login session lasted less than 10 minutes, but resulted in deletion of all previous uploads except one titled Night Vision Test Number 2. Its upload timestamp predated the disappearance by exactly 2 minutes. Why leave only that one? The surviving clip, less than 10 seconds long, depicted a simple setup, Ellison adjusting the trail camera while testing focus. In the final frame, his reflection appeared faintly on the lens housing. Behind him, deeper in the trees, a dim outline curved across the periphery, slightly delayed in movement as though the reflection and the object behind it were out of sync. The detail went unnoticed for months until frame-stabilized copies circulated through forums. When slowed, the offset became clearer. Ellison's arm lowered first, but the faint silhouette of the same motion lingered a half-beat longer before fading, as if something had been learning how to mirror him and hadn't quite perfected the timing. Investigators declined to comment on the reactivation of his account. The provider confirmed only that the deletion and upload records were genuine and originated from correct credentials. Forensic analysts couldn't determine whether the login came from recovered hardware or a reused credential on another machine, leaving the source of access unresolved. Someone still had his passwords. Someone was still watching his work. By July, the case was formally suspended. The forest had taken everything back. Only the footage remained, clear, silent, watching. The three remaining points, the camera, drone, and watch, formed the last measurable chain in a story without closure. Local news moved on, and Moss reclaimed the search site. Online, only fragments survived, mirrored clips, conflicting diagrams, fading threads of speculation. The last trace of Mark Ellison came from a device built to record what passed before it, not what lingered behind. Everything after that was interpretation. Pixels, reflections, and data gaps where a person should have been. Maybe something else had been watching him.